the reading of his word. Shabbat Shalom. I am not Dan Kolansky. And yet, he is the one who's going to be giving the message this morning. The reason for that is I am in the middle of a 2-week intensive class time in New York. I came back just to be with you for Shabbat. I'm going back to New York tomorrow. But I knew well in advance that I was not going to have the time or energy to put into studying to prepare a message for today. So some time ago, I asked Dan if he would be willing to put something together, and he did. He sent it to me, and I'm confident that what he will bring to you this morning is absolutely in line with everything that we're looking forward to doing in 2013. I'm really excited. Dan is part of the Feinberg Center program. He is studying in the same program that I am, though he is a couple of years behind me, about 14, I think. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure anymore how long I've been in the program, but it seems that way. I'm really glad to be here. I am really tired, though, and so it is with great pleasure that I turn the microphone and the bema over to Dan Kolansky.
So do I sound okay? No? Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Hey! My voice doesn't naturally have any bass in it, so I gotta turn the bass up back there so I don't sound like a little girl. Put this here. So Neil did ask me to type something up. And so last time I wrote out a PowerPoint to kind of guide me along. This time I trying something different. I actually wrote it out word for word. So I'm going to semi-give this message, semi-read this message to you, because I think it'll be a little bit more eloquent if I do it that way, and if I try to make it up on the spot. So yeah, let's give it a whirl, see what we got. This message is really about calling. I'm going to give that ahead of time because this has been the subject of my life for the last 4 months, 5 months, going on a year. Trying to deal with calling, realizing that I've been called to do something and trying to come to terms with what that is, how that affects my life, my family, how that affects the people around me, what that means that I should be doing. And so I set out on a mission, and this message is actually the culmination of the mission thus far. It's definitely not over, but it's stuff that I've studied over the last couple of months, stories of people that I've read about who also had to deal with being called. And, it was, I'm going to try and make it through it without, this is a very personal subject to me right now, and I'm going to try and make it through it without crying like a little girl, but I can't guarantee anything. Because it's just something that's very important to me. And hopefully by the end of this, it'll be very important to you too. So I wanted to just start off with a story. It's a story of a man that I read about this week, just kind of in my normal perusing of the internet. I stumbled over an article about the man with the golden arm. Some of you may know who this is, some of you may not. This was a young man named, well, he's not young anymore, but he's still alive. His name is James Harrison. He was born in 1936 in Australia. At the age of 13, James fell to pneumonia. He got pneumonia, and one of his lungs was metastasized. And so they kind of rushed him into the emergency room for chest surgery. And during the operation, he lost so much blood that they had to give him 13 liters of transfused blood in order for him just to survive. At 13 years old, he comes out of this operation and he realized that the reason that he was still alive was because he had received these transfusions, because there was no way the doctors could have removed that lung without the extra blood on hand. And so he made a pact with himself, and he said, I am going to donate blood to others just like they have given to me. And over the next 60 years, and he's still going, James Harrison has gained the world record for the most blood ever donated. He's donated blood over 1,000 times. But that was just the surface of his calling in life because, well, sometimes you realize the Lord builds you for a purpose, and James had been built for a purpose. And he was built for one of the most underpraised and significant purposes of the 20th century. And it wasn't just donating blood. His blood contained a rare antibody that fights rhesus disease. My understanding is that it's a deadly malady that impacts newborn children. And of the 1,000 times that he's donated blood, his blood has been used to save over 2 million children and counting. And this was a man that just was trying to give back for what the Lord had done to him. You know, James was built for a purpose, and I think that we are all built for a purpose as well. Everyone has a calling. And you know, sometimes it always seems so clear in retrospect. You read about people who had calling, like James, right? So James, at this end of the line, we're like, well, of course he was supposed to donate blood. But you know, at 13 years old, being rushed into the emergency room, he had no idea if he was even going to be alive tomorrow. Forget about doing anything about anything. As believers, we're specially crafted for a purpose. Not only that, and we're kind of lucky because we actually have an instruction manual in the form of the Holy Scriptures that kind of teaches us a little bit about what it is we're supposed to do in life. Of course, the Lord has something specific for everyone individually, but we all have a purpose as a group. And here at Sar Shalom, our purpose might be just a little bit different than the rest of the church. And that's some of the stuff that I want to share to you about today. That's some of the stuff that I've been praying about over the last 3 months. My introduction to my purpose and to the purpose of this congregation, well, you know, I've grown up in this in Messianic congregation since I was 3, but my true introduction to the academic version of the purpose of this congregation starts with a story of a 19th century small-time rabbi who lived in Hungary. 19th century is 1800s, in case you care. I always get them confused. I always think, 1900s, right? Yeah. This guy was a small-time rabbi. He was named Leopold Cohen, who many of you may know. If you don't know, don't worry, I'm about to tell you who he is. His story has been interesting to me because he's one of those people who found Messiah, where people like him. More recent example might be Josh McDowell, who started off searching how to dismiss Christ, and then later on ended up coming to faith because of his study. Paul's a great biblical example of that, who started off against. And Leopold, like many Jewish people, started off trying to disprove it, and then later on had to come full circle and came to faith. And that because of that, oftentimes people like this become powerful beacons of faith and evangelism, and they do great things. Mostly because they had to have a great deal of faith and humility just to get to where they were. Anyway, Leopold was a rabbi. He serviced 3 small towns in Hungary. They couldn't afford their own rabbi, so he kind of just traveled around between them. But he was definitely no slacker when it came to the study of God's words, and he was a bit of a troubled man because his study of Scripture had raised some questions about the Messiah, and he didn't quite know the answers to them, and it was upsetting. In the 19th century, it wasn't cool to talk about the Messiah. It wasn't a good idea, even as Jews. The Jewish people have always, throughout history, looked for a Messiah, but it wasn't even cool to talk about a Messiah. Forget about the Messiah. The Jewish people were tired of running at this point in time. They had been mercilessly persecuted for about 2 millennia at this point, and they had given up as a people on finding a Messiah. The last significant writings about a Messiah had dated back to Rabbi Maimonides, better known as Ramban, who lived about 1200 AD. So now here we are 500 years later, and 2 over-sensationalized false messiahs later. Leopold is faced with trying to figure out about this scripture that he's read. So it clearly pointed to a Messiah. And he didn't know what to make of it because it appeared that no Messiah had come, as far as he could tell. So seeking answers to his questions, Leopold consulted with another rabbi in the area that he thought might be able to answer his questions. However, the rabbi, fearing the immense peer pressure that Leopold was also feeling, gave him a little bit of advice. Instead of answering his questions, just gave him a little bit of advice that would change his life pretty much forever. He said, "Perhaps if you go to America, you'll find your answers." So Leopold kissed his wife and his family goodbye and began the long journey to America. This was not like today where you could just hop on a plane and go over there. His trip to America lasted, I think it was 2 years. So he was gone from his family for a long time. This was not